Hey guys, Sen here. I've got some more Capital B2 shots I was able to land in these past couple of raid weekends. I've got some really good ones, as well as some really instructive ones. There's a lot of attacks in this video, so let's just dive straight into it. And here we go up against our very first Capital Peak. Now this base is completely maxed with all of its defense inside. This is a pretty legit layout, and these are very hard to take out. And you'll see how we get this done. A pack of split archers at the very start. I love splitting archers or splitting minions because they're very good at clearing trash from range, as well as they're very immune to traps. And then afterwards, we use another barb down south to reinforce and make sure the map gets opened up down south, because that's where we're going to come in from. And then a frost on the peak, inferno tower, and giant cannon. The frost on the peak is such a big deal. The peak fires super slowly, so with the frost, with some zaps, and with those hog glider stuns, you can basically make sure that the peak never shoots at your troops. But we're going to wait and wait and wait for all of these buildings down south to get cleared, so we can open up the map for deployment, and you will see why that is important. We drop a rage preemptively leading up to the capital peak. Make sure that it covers any wizards that are trying to chain off of it. And then we drop it as far out as possible to make sure that we can also get some value as we drop our Sparky from the far bottom side. I drop a Sparky on the right hand side of this corner wall over here, as left as I can, and you'll see why that comes into play. We drop down 2 rams as well. I drop both of the rams simultaneously against the capital peak because there could be traps when there is a zap trap and a giant bomb that will instantly kill your ram as well as the barbs inside, and that will leave your Sparky exposed when you only drop 1 ram. So when I'm trying to open up the first layer of walls, I almost always go with 2 rams at once, and then afterwards we can trickle in some barbs to clear the trash in behind, as well as a couple more rams to provide some more distraction, open up some more walls, as well as pull a bunch of traps. A log trap, a zap trap gets pulled, and notice once the Sparky gets its first chain off, finish off an air defense, finishes off a spirit thrower, because we dropped it at a low angle, that means it walks towards the crusher next. A Tesla pops, but that is free value. Sparky chain, giant punches it down, and because we dropped the Sparky from a low angle, now the Sparky actually walks into the rage spell, into the blast bow, as it chains down the backside Tesla, backside rapid rocket. And I was hoping that after the second chain finishing off the blast bow, that the Sparky would push herself back towards this giant cannon, but unfortunately she locks onto the peak first, and she does not chain very well off of that, and that means I instead will have to send in my wizard bomb straight onto the giant cannon, finish those defenses off on the left hand side first, and then those wizards will go in towards the peak. And because the frost spell covers where the dragon is flying, the dragon flies in the frost spell and gets chained off of the capital peak. The peak goes down, the wizards finish off the enemy dragon. I got a little bit too excited and I dropped my barb down on top of the spirit thrower. I did not need that. I should have let Sparky finish that all down. Look at that insane chain, 4 defenses, but if I had that barb, I would be able to reset this Inferno Tower and give the Sparky just enough to finish off the Inferno Tower, because with just the zap, she'll get ramped up again and she will not get another shot to finish that thing off. So that was one small mistake I made in the attack. There's one more archer that's still working. Those archers, those minions against the peak trash buildings are so good, and even pulls a trap in the very end. Huge first hit against this peak, but these are not easy to finish. And if you spam this thing down with 2 rocket artillery's blast bow, as well as a ton of splash defenses on the backside, break cards, giant posts, you will fail. So you still need to plant these things out if you want to convert a great opener like that, and you will see how. So starting off, we drop down a rage spell leading in towards this wizard tower, 2 graveyard spells, both inside the dead zone of the multi-mortar. I use 2 of them because I need to overwhelm this multi-mortar, because there's a lot of point defenses that could pick off my Larrys. And then we'll drop down a giant towards this Inferno Tower, tank the blast bow, tank the rocket artillery, then I can sneak in 2 barbs to chip down this Inferno Tower, and with the distraction the giant provides, we can then send in a Sparky right on top of this wizard tower. Notice how I drop the Sparky towards the right of the wizard tower. That means she pushes herself back in towards the other wizard tower and not the air bombs. He locks on the wizard tower, will chain down the other rocket artillery, and then finish off the blast bow, and all of the big splash defenses are gone. As she starts chaining off the air bombs, she chips down the enemy giants, and those enemy giants will spawn graveyard skeletons from me from the left hand side. We have some hog riders to reinforce, to chip down the spirit throwers that are behind the walls that my Larrys can't reach, as well as a ram to help provide some distraction. And then those hog riders are going to help collapse those left point defenses as my Sparky finishes off those bomb towers one by one. There's still a raid card, so be careful. These things do 1,000 damage per second. When they lock onto your Sparky, they even have that final form, so it's basically over for Sparky, so you have to be careful. I drop a ramp to open up the wall, a giant to tank, and then we'll use 2 barbs to make sure we can chip down that enemy raid card before the Sparky ever gets locked onto. Once the Sparky finishes off the raid card, she'll spawn a ton more Larrys, finish off those graveyard spells for me, and then my Sparky moves towards the right, towards those final few defenses, ram to open up the wall. She'll lock onto this rapid rocket, chain down the enemy spear thrower, and then notice how all these buildings are clumped up for a Sparky chain. My Hog Riders chip down the multi-mortar enough to where my Sparky can one-shot it, as well as the cannon in behind. There's just one multi-cannon that will be left, a spear thrower that's going to get ganged up by barbarians, and then we use one last Hog Rider, finish off the multi-cannon, and there's nothing left on this base. Super nice finish against this base. Very nicely planned with the Sparky on the first hit, sending it at a low angle to make sure I get so much value off the rage spell as well as all of those chains. Mapping out your Sparky chains is so important, especially against very difficult bases like this. We were able to get this insanely difficult peak 2 shot with an insane 2 Sparky hits. And here we go up against the next Capital Peak. Now this is a very trapped opener. You can see all those defenses are pointing in towards the deployment zone to make the attacker very uncomfortable on the entry, but this is also a very bad base in this current meta, and you will see why. A ram to pull 2 zap traps on the entry, a rage leading up towards the Capital Peak, as well as this giant cannon. Because this spear thrower is reachable over the outside walls, with a Sparky it will be able to chain down the giant cannon as well as a ton of other defenses on the approach. A graveyard spell on top of the dead zone multi-mortar to tank any of those backside defenses as my troops start dying off. Sparky finishes off the cannon, then we can target this Capital Peak with a Hog Glider, and then 6 wizards in behind. I bring 6 wizards, a ton of wizards to bomb that peak, to kill the dragon as fast as possible so that it doesn't distract my troops, as well as chain down the blast burst in behind, as well as finish off those enemy giants super fast that approached me from the left hand side of the base. Rage Sparky is still going to get some value, chipped on the bomb tower as quickly as possible, and we held on to our last graveyard spell because I want to pinata as my Sparky dies to get a pinata off on top of the rocket artillery over there. So the Sparky still gets a huge chain on all those point defenses, and here is where I realized I messed up. I dropped down my graveyard spell on top of this rocket artillery, and notice once my Sparky goes down, the raid ends. Now you might be wondering, what the heck is that? This is a glitch with Sparky right now. If Sparky is the last thing to die, you don't get any graveyard Larrys and your attack just automatically ends. It's a really BS interaction. I did know about it, so I was slapping myself in the head because I screwed that up. I should have held onto a ramp or something, anything to make sure my Sparky Pinata would work. I screwed up and that graveyard was swagged on the first hit, so now it's a matter of recovering it. A giant bomb blows up my hogs as they finish off the first compartment over there. We use a P.E.K.K.A. to try to snipe down the other bottom side giant cannon, and we're just going to pray that graveyard hogs have enough. Those hog riders finish off the left rocket artillery compartment that should have been down from the very first attack. And then another graveyard on this other backside rocket artillery. The frostball is going to slow down this enemy raid cart to make sure my hog riders have a cleaner approach. More bombs get popped, they kill a ton of hogs, ton of Larrys will spawn, but my P.E.K.K.A. has enough to finish off the bomb tower, finish off the air defense, and will support from the bottom angle as we collapse the right hand side with a bunch more hog riders. The crusher is the big threat. We use 2 hog gliders because there's a rapid rocket, so if we want to stun that thing, we're going to use 2 hog riders to do so. The P.E.K.K.A. is trying to beat through the wall to get to the enemy raid card, but those frost spells as well as the graveyard spell is so nasty in distracting the Tesla as well as the enemy multi-cannon, and it's just a matter of, do we have enough troops to finish off those last few defenses? We have Larrys everywhere, we do have a P.E.K.K.A., a minute on the clock, a ton of time remaining, and it's just a matter of, can we get this P.E.K.K.A. towards this final Inferno Tower on the backside over here. The Wizard Tower is going to be super annoying and sniping down a ton of my Larrys, but as long as the P.E.K.K.A. is able to blow that thing up, we should be good. Where's the P.E.K.K.A. going? It somehow turns back for the clan houses, and that is perfect for me because that means my P.E.K.K.A. as well as my Larrys are going to converge towards the backside Wizard Tower as well as Inferno together and try to collapse that thing on the backside. So I got a tiny bit lucky at the end, but I feel like that was a little bit deserved after how poorly that first hit went because of that glitch. So finishing that base off with just 3 bonus gold, we'll take it. It's still a maxed out peak 2 shot. And now we're going to take a look at a bit of an easier capital peak. Now these bases are super common even at 2000 plus upgrades. Clans usually don't space their defenses properly for Sparky and Wizard chains, and also you're going to see a ton of ruins on the outside. These are the kinds of bases, capital peaks, that you're going to want to plan out the most and try to go for 2 shots because they give you the best chance. And you can use a pack of minions, sniper rocket artillery, as well as the enemy giant post. That is huge value and makes your life a lot easier on the finish of the attack. And we're going to wait for those minions to finish off the giant post and not drop down any more ground troops, because after the post goes down, any ground troops that we drop will get pulled by those enemy giants, and we'll give those minions as much time as needed. And then we drop down a ram, a couple rams to tank, as well as plenty traps. Zap traps get pulled, and then Sparky on top of the rapid rocket. We calculated our chains down the top side air defense, chips down the wizard tower, so one more chain finishes off the bomb tower as well as wizard tower, and then Sparky will go into that race well that we dropped preemptively. A ton of rams to pull any more zap traps, open up the walls, and make sure my Sparky is protected. Giant in behind to continuously distract. Make sure the Inferno Tower does not lock onto me. We do have a zap just in case. We use a Giant to chain down the Inferno Tower to get the Sparky walking to the top of this rapid rocket. Chain down the backside crusher over there. And then Sparky takes a bit of a weird path outside of the rage spell. And unfortunately, we'll have to take a couple of shots to finish off the Tesla as well as the enemy Giant Cannon. Not too big of a deal. We use a frost spell. Frost spells are so good against the capital peak, like I said, and especially when we can cover this blast throw as well as this giant cannon for the second hit. That is such huge value. We expose this left side dragon coast so we can snipe it with a barb as well as an inferno dragon. That is also huge value because enemy dragons are so annoying. On our first attacks, we were just able to chain it down with those wizards off the capital peak, but we were able to take it down even easier on this hit, and we don't have to worry about that thing melting down all of my troops. The Sparky does go down as she locks on the top of the capital peak, and notice how there's 8.6k left on the space. You might be thinking it's over and that I'm done for, but that's not actually quite the case. Against capital peaks, I'm not always thinking about how many defenses and how much gold I can get on the first attack. I'm thinking about how I can carve the base and set things up to make sure that the 2-shot is possible. So we make sure that we have the frost spell already down. That will give us huge value on this hit over here. And then we made sure that we cleared out the rocket artillery and all those other annoying things on the left hand side, as well as the dragon post, because those are super annoying to face on the back section over there. And it also takes a ton of time to clean all those things up. So we do that on the first hit when we have all the time in the world, and then the second hit can go in and try to sweep through the base as quickly as possible. Race spell leading in the capital peak. I noticed that all of the splash defenses on this base are basically in range of the capital peak off a wizard chain from the bottom side, so that's why we entered from there on the first hit. And then we can use a giant to tank the peak as well as the rocket artillery, rams to try to pull any traps and get the left side graveyard spell going. We drop down the graveyard between the blast bows behind the giant cannon, distract all of those defenses as my troops start dying off, and then we drop down our wizards as all the defenses are distracted. A hog glider to stun the capital peak, make sure that it doesn't get another shot on me. A hog glider on top of this explodes blast bow on the left hand side, and those wizard chains will chain down everything as well as the peak. Because there's no traps down here, we used rams as well as there's not many 2x2 gaps inside the base on this left hand side. That means my wizards actually can be safe, so we're actually not dropping down our hog riders yet. There's just a bunch of point defense on the backside, so the graveyard is going to do a great job over there, but we're going to save our last ramp to open up the wall for the wizards and have them push forward towards the backside before we drop down all our hog riders to make sure all my troops will converge back there at once. Now once the wizards start approaching, we drop down a bunch of hogs at once. As they get blown up, we get some graveyard Larrys that pull the last giant bomb on the backside of the base, and there's just too many hog gliders, too many Larrys everywhere helping provide distraction, and those cannons are not going to be enough to stop all the spam that's converging to the backside defense of the base. There's 8.6k on this base, but we're able to smash through everything. Huge wizard bomb that we set up on the first hit, and a ton of value with those hog rider graveyards on the back section over there. And just like that, we're going to get this peak down in 2 attacks. There's just one more raid cart that's stuck behind this post over here, but that's not going to be a problem. We have way too many piggies left, and this base is absolutely cooked. Bases like these are super common, even at 2000 plus upgrades, and they're very learnable. You can definitely replicate attacks like this and consistently pull off 2 shots against bases that just give you so much chain value off of Sparky and so much chain value off of your wizards. And now this next peak is really going to showcase what I mean when I say that you don't really need to get that much on the first attack. You really just need to set things up so that you can actually finish it off on the second attack. So starting off, we're going to clear any ruins on the outside as always. These are really nice to get out of the way in the first hit, especially the enemy dragon, because when you're using graveyards on the second hit, if that spawns air Larrys, those Larrys are kind of wasted because air Larrys are not usually that useful versus the capital peak. But we're going to take the giant down with a pack of minions, and then the Inferno Dragon is going to kill the enemy super as well as the blast bow, giant to tank at an angle, and then I'm also going to try to keep the Inferno Dragon alive so we can take out that Inferno Tower. So we'll hopefully funnel our Inferno Dragon in with a barb on the trash building, and then use the barrel as well as the ram to try to get the Inferno Tower down as well, and also hopefully try to snipe the enemy raid cart if it positions itself outside of range of the spear thrower. And notice how I dropped down the frostspell on top of the capital peak. That's always useful if you're not able to take that out on the first attack, because then it'll be slowed down for the second hit. But also, I hit the wizard tower in this multi-mortar over here and not this bottom side Inferno Tower, and the reason for that is because, first of all, I'm able to chain all this down with wizards anyways, but on the second hit, if I freeze this wizard tower and this multi-mortar, that means this backside, these backside big splash defenses are super exposed to being able to be sniped down with a graveyard spell. So that's why I want to frost those two defenses on the backside, and then I'm going to come in at an angle to kill all of these splash defenses over here with a Sparky and try to push my way into the peak with the help of the rage spell. I don't need to actually kill the peak, I just need to get close enough to where I can start dropping wizards inside the rage spell and on top of the peak. So I'm coming in at a bit of an angle right now, and also coming away from the Inferno Tower means that I can just easily snipe that down with wizards on the second attack and don't have to worry about trying to distract the Inferno Tower for Sparky, because not having a rage spell means that it's basically impossible to try to push into an Inferno Tower efficiently. And so Sparky is just gonna go her way around. Unfortunately, she wraps around outside of the rage spell, and she's just taking a nice stroll around. We only have 2 more rams left, but Sparky does have a good deal of HP. She steps just inside the rage spell for 1 shot against the multi-mortar, but we've run out of tanking. We have a jump spell, though we don't have a zap either. Jump spell is going to be nice to get my troops over the wall on the second blow as well, but there is so much still left. AK still left, a bunch of big splash defenses, but of course, we've set things up so nicely. All of our spells are now useful on the second attack. The frost is slowing everything down. The rage spell is perfectly placed to clip my wizards, and we just need to drop our wizards on top of the district hall graveyards on the backside splash defenses. The wizards are going to chain down the Inferno Tower, chain down the peak, a hog glider to stun the capital peak, as well as some hog riders on the flanks to make sure those big splash defenses go down. And once they go down, a lot of the threat is gone. We're holding on to our last 5 hogs. I usually like to hold on to a lot of hogs after the peak goes down, because then you can use them to pick off what's left. If you spam them all in, they usually run into a ton of traps and you just get completely bombed by them. But if we're able to hold on to them for later on, and we really didn't need that much for the peak, because after the wizards chained out all the defenses around, there really wasn't anything shooting at me. So 1 more hog rider on top of the bomb tower is going to save a lot of HP on the left side pack of hogs. And now we are just going to take our hands off the wheel. We have a zap that we can use on the spear thrower on the backside. So many troops still alive, a bunch of Larrys. This attack is also very fast, graveyard hogs, which makes it such a great finisher. And at this point, we have too much still left. Even though there's a ton of bombs outside the base, it's not going to matter. And we're going to fast forward from here as the hog riders clean up the rest of the trash buildings as all those traps start killing them off. And finally, we have a graveyard hog attack as the first hit. I usually do not do this. I wouldn't recommend it against most compact peaks, simply because Sparky is almost always the right call. So many defenses are clumped up and so much value for those Sparky chains to take them all out at once. But in this case, I go in with graveyard hogs simply because I don't really need to get too many defenses to reach this capital peak from the left hand side. I go in from the left because this blast bow is super exposed, but there really isn't that many defenses in the way of my entry and getting wizards on top of the peak for the second attack. But also, the advantage to graveyard hogs is, of course, those graveyard spells. Having them down for the second attack, they're one of the best spells to bring on the first hit to carry you to the second attack. Whereas Sparky, you usually have a couple of useless rages if you can't drop the rage deep enough. And so we're going to go in with graveyard hogs, just a shallow approach, and also try to pick off as many ruins on the outside as we can. Pull out a dragon here, use an Inferno Dragon to kill that while we're using some barbs to help distract. But you'll also see why I typically don't go in with Graveyard Hogs on this attack, because against the Capital Peak on the first hit when there's so many traps around, they can usually just get cooked really badly. And also the other reason that I decide to go in with Graveyard Hogs actually is because there's no 2x2 gaps on the approach. There's a couple inside of the Spear Thrower compartment, but I can drop down some graveyard spells on whatever 2x2 gaps I see inside the base and also help distract those big defenses. And then Hog Riders should be pretty safe on the approach, but even when there's not really that many traps inside the base, you'll see Hog Riders just don't make it that far on the first hit. But we're going to use a wave of Hog Riders to stun those defenses on the approach. 3 more and still in the bag. Peak fire super slowly, so we don't have to be too worried about that. But I think a Rocket Shell actually clipped a ton of my Hogs on top of the Inferno Tower, which means that we have to reinforce to take that thing out. You also have to be careful because there's a lot of Rapid Rockets, and that usually kills a lot of your gliders. So sometimes you have to send in 2 Hogs at a time to try to get one of those to the defense that you want to stun. And also, like I said, there's a ton of traps. A Giant Bomb blows up my remaining Hogs. We had 1 more Ram that we saved up to open up the right-hand side, clear some trash buildings, as well as open up the map over there to open up the deployment zone towards this Giant Cannon over here. But we've achieved everything we wanted, even though there's still so much still left on the base. And it's just a matter of finishing this attack off. Of course, we're going to go in with a Wizard Bomb when there's just so much value like this. That is just a natural thing to do, but notice how I try to drop my Rage Spell towards the top hand side like this, because I want to come in with my Wizards from the left ankle on top of this peak. I'll use a Barb to clear all these trash buildings and open up the map towards there, but I want to send in my Wizards to finish off the peak and then have those Wizards, instead of wrapping down for these Teslas that are just going to melt through them, but send them towards this blast bow on the top side, take out the blast bow really fast, and also this Crusher and these 2 bomb towers to grab them with the help of the Wizard Chains and help out my Hog Riders, because Hog Riders don't do too well against those defenses on their own, so I want my Wizards to survive off the peak and help out over there. But 9.4k finish, that's going to be a lot, and we do need to execute properly. A Giant to tank some of those flash defenses on the approach. I actually send the Giant towards the air bombs, towards where my Wizards are going to be walking, so I do need to wait a little bit for the Giant to walk ahead. And now, when everything is distracted, I drop down my 4 Wizards on top of the peak. So much chain value around here. The Inferno Tower is also going to go down after the Rocket Artillery. 1 Hog Rider to stun the peak to give those Wizards, with the help of the Rage Spell, with the help of those Hog Riders, enough time to finish that off. I held on to 8 of my Hog Riders and a Graveyard Spell for later onto the attack. I used a Graveyard on top of this Multi-Mortar, then a Hog Rider on top of the Wizard Tower to keep those Larrys inside that Graveyard alive. Now my Wizards are wrapping towards the top hand side just like I wanted it. And we're going to wait for those Wizards to pick off the Crusher. We have 1 more Hog Glider that we're going to use to try to help support the Wizards on the flank to keep those things alive and help provide some distraction to get them to those Spear Thrower, get them to the other Bomb Tower as well. We have 3 more still in the bag. The Larrys from the top section, their shields got blown up, but we have a ton of them who are going to overwhelm the Spear Thrower over here. 1 Hog Glider to stun the Tesla while it was distracted on some other troops. 2 more still in the bag, and the Giant Cannon compartment is the last thing standing in the way. I know this is the default room, so I know where the traps are. A Log Trap, a Zap Trap, and a Giant Bomb gets pulled by a Barbarian. 1 more Hog Rider to tank the Giant Cannon from the right angle. 1 more Hog Rider on the left-hand side to DPS the cannon, as well as the Spear Thrower down, and try to get to this last Giant Cannon. The Giant Cannons at max will 2-shot your Hog Riders, so that last Hog Rider is going to help to provide some distraction, but it's getting really low. We only have 2 more Hog Riders that are 1 shot away, but they have just enough damage to finish off the Giant Cannon, finish off the last defense on this base. It's a matter of cleanup, and because we used our Hog Gliders to stun those defenses that the Wizards were getting shot at by, we were able to keep a couple of my Wizards still alive, and they're going to help me on the cleanup and making sure that I don't time fail against this base. Huge finish. It's all about the setup. It's all about getting enough value on the first hit and also considering what spells that you have down from the first hit, and that will just allow you to get so many peak 2 shots if you can just plan accordingly. Some of these bases are not the easiest, but a lot of the peaks that you'll run into at 2,000 plus, even now, are not well adjusted for Sparky and Wizard Chains, and you can take them out in 2 attacks. Alright, I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Now, I know that I am late on this, but shout out to Alpal from our Discord server for being the 3rd person to reach level 100 there. Our Discord server is the best place to learn and chat about the clan capital, so thank you to Alpal for help making it what it is today, and you can join up as well. Anyone can with the link in the description below. And hopefully if you can see some of those similar themes with Sparky chain value, Wizard chain value, and setting up spells from your first hit to help carry you out on the second attack, you can also help out your clans landing a bunch more peak 2 shots in your own raid weekends. But like and subscribe if you enjoyed today's video, and take care.